Hey there, Skullheads. I'm Snags.
And I'm old Silky.
And I'm Alan.
We got Alan Beatle Bailey in the house with us again.
This
We're
is
gonna-
he's done. What do you do? 3 episodes of the Beatles, Bob Dylan,
And Wet Shoelaces.
And then Wet Shoelaces. Wet Shoelaces.
So this is his sixth time we've had him on.
When we're covering a cat like Tom Waits, we need a weirdo like Alan to join us because just the two of us is not quite weird enough. You know, you got to get that little extra dash of weird.
It's El Condor in the house.
Oh, El Condor in the house. What's up, kid? Pimp the website.
Go to snagsandsilky.com. We got Lego sets. We got Funko Pops.
Whiskey.
Yeah,
What happened to the...
We got anti-aircraft missiles.
I've never been drinking. The piano is.
Oh,
there you go. The piano has been drinking. Yeah.
All right.
There's the title. There's the title.
There he goes.
That was an impressive reference from a 9-year-old. Yeah.
Yeah. Wow.
All right. So before we jump into it, we're gonna be rapping about Tom Waits tonight. But before we jump into it, we just want to mention if you go to snagsandsilky.com, one thing you will notice that has been added is a donation button. So
and this is to help us make this worthwhile for you guys.
Absolutely.
I mean, we're gonna act like it's a joke, but really submit some money to us.
The more money you give us, the more awesome this podcast will be. We promise. We won't be just going out and buying random shit with it, like
No, I don't buy anything.
A motorcycle or a helicopter.
I get a printer that works.
Yeah. Seriously though, suggested donation is $4 million. Now the thing is, you can use credit card or Cash App. It's through this
we're not going to
service.
split hairs. If you want to donate $20,
you can use it goes through this service called buymeacoffee.com, right? And so if you try to donate the $4 million, which is the suggested donation, you may get snagged up because they might not. I don't know if they're going to let you donate that much. So if that's the case, if you're rushing to the website right now to donate your $4 million and they're saying, no, this is too much, the bank is suspicious, whatever, there's a recurring donation button on there. So you could set it for just 10 grand a month or something, and let it run out till it gets to 4 million. We'll take it on installment plans.
I'm on it.
Yeah. If you don't have that, $5 grand is fine. $1,000 is fine. Whatever you can afford.
This is all legit. Would go to the podcast.
No, really.
Yeah,
we promise.
So,
I mean, if you want to hear a $4 million podcast minus expenses,
that's how you get good guests on and shit.
The occasional vacation in the Bahamas, you got to rest up to be good at
on
the
location.
Podcast. Yeah. There's a lot of expenses that may not seem like they're related to the podcast, like weed and a sports car.
You're killing any reason.
They were just about to donate the $4 million until I said that.
Now you're bringing up drugs. That's great.
Weed is not a drug; it's an herb, man. It's
right.
of the earth. All right. So let's jump into it. Tom Waits. I did start reading a book called The Many Lives of Tom Waits, which I basically just got through the beginning of it. It's been a crazy couple of weeks, but it's very detailed. His early life is outlined in a very detailed way. I'm going to just kind of tell the story of his early life. You guys feel free to kind of jump in if it's relevant. Once we get through to when he gets signed to the record deal, we'll just open it up and freeform the conversation after that. But definitely jump in here if anything I say strikes a chord. So Tom Waits' father was named after Frank and Jesse James. His name was Frank Jesse Waits. And he was the inspiration for Frank, the character from Frank's Wild Years.
And see, I always thought that was in
Sinatra.
ode to Frank Zappa.
Oh, I thought it was Sinatra.
Oh, there you go. I thought it was Frank Booth from Blue Velvet.
Sure.
So Tom grew up in a safe suburban area, but his parents divorced early. Frank didn't torch the place and hit the road. He just hit the road.
Right.
And Tom Waits was one of very few baby boomer musician bios in which Alan Beatle Bailey's favorite band, the Beatles, is not mentioned as a key turning point. There is no, I can't tell you how many musician bios I've read, and I've read a ton of them.
Yeah.
And 95% of them will talk about the day they saw the Beatles on Ed Sullivan.
Ed Sullivan,
changed their life.
Yep.
Not for Tom Waits. He saw James Brown on TV. He had a diverse set of influences. Reverend Gary Davis, Ramblin' Jack Elliott, Mississippi John Hurt, who I fucking love. We did a whole episode on that cat. Lightning Hopkins. So at 15, he joins a local covered band called The System, and he's the rhythm guitar player. He's also discovers this radio station called 1090 AM with Wolfman Jack.
I got it to print.
Oh.
Old Silky got his printer to print.
Yes.
But you still need to donate to the podcast because he obviously, it took too long. He needs a better printer.
We're off and running now.
Yeah. $1,500, get a good printer and, some other stuff. Donate. So anyways, Wolfman, he loved Wolfman Jack. And
I love Wolfman Jack. I remember hearing him as a young kid.
Yeah. You mess with the Wolfman.
If you remember American Hot Wax, Wolfman Jack was in that. It had a bunch of people from Saturday Night Live, Lorraine Newman, the Tonight Show guy. After Carson, he has that god awful huge chin.
Leno.
Jay Leno was in American Hot Wax.
Yeah, Leno had an afro back in the 70s.
Yeah. But he's in American Hot Wax with Wolfman Jack. Wolfman Jack also had some albums. Great shit.
Yeah.
Late 60s.
Ah, cool. So and you can, if you listen to Tom Waits, especially when he gets into his howling phase in the the late 80s, early 90s, you can hear some Wolfman Jack influence, and we'll talk a little bit more about his voice in a little bit. But at the same time, he's in this cover band playing rhythm guitar. He's listening to Wolfman Jack every night. He's working his way through his parents' record collection. So all his friends are listening to the Beatles and the Beach Boys, and he's listening to all these jazz and pop standards that his parents have, Hoagie Carmichael and all that shit. He gets a job at this restaurant called Napoleon's Pizza, and they had Ray Charles on the hi-fi all the time, so he became a Ray Charles fanatic. At Napoleon's, he was a dishwasher, a pizza cook, and a waiter, and he started just writing down snippets of conversations that he would overhear at Napoleon's, and had a bunch of dead-end jobs before his career took off, including a stint in a Bible factory, which I think is fucking hilarious.
That's great.
And at the same time,
$20 is $20, right?
Yeah. At the same time, he's listening to all these other musical influences. He's devouring all the beat poets. So he's reading Kerouac, Ginsberg, Corso, Gregory Corso, William Burroughs, who shows up on Black Rider decades later on one of his albums. So you can see his creative sensibilities starting to come into place here. He at one point in his late teens, he tried to get a job as a lounge singer at a golf course. And so, you got friends that are trying to make it to the Allman Brothers gig, and he's putting on a suit and going to some golf course to try to get a job as a lounge singer. It's just
I love anybody that's they found their path and that's the path they're on.
Yeah.
I know when I was flipping pizzas at Mellow Mushroom, we're all playing Megadeth, Metallica, Anthrax, all your thrash bands.
And that was when that was considered weird. That was right when it was dropping, and everybody was like, "What the fuck is this shit?"
Yeah, and I mean the louder the better. And I worked with guys that were just our age, but they were into Phil Ox and Dylan.
Yeah.
And that's all they listened to, and they'd
That's pretty cool.
So halfway through thrash night, this guy would put on Dylan because he'd heard enough of our screaming death metal. And it would just on it, we'd listen to the like Slayer Rain and Blood, and then he'd put on this Phil Ox thing that had it must have had 50 songs. It was crazy.
Yeah.
But,
I had
Phil Ox hour. And
I had
then
one of his cassettes back in the day.
Back to Metallica,
Yeah. So he didn't get the lounge singer gig. He was also listening to a comedy of Lenny Bruce and Lord Buckley, hipster comedians. And he was also influenced by this jazz cat named Slim Gallard. SlimGaillard. And I actually checked him out on Spotify, and I sent these to a playlist. And that guy, you can definitely hear the Tom Waits influence. He's just kind of a jazz singer, but got a little bit of comedian and huckster kind of vibe going on at the same time.
Tom Waits comes off as just an old timey bard, just a song and dance man, a poet. Definitely a lot of Dylan influence. I always felt.
Yeah, no, he does. He says he's influenced by Dylan. Yeah, he go ahead.
Yeah, Slim Gallard reminded me of. I'd never heard him before. You sent me
either. Me either. Yeah.
He reminded me of Nat Cole.
Mm-hmm.
Which I
Nat
love.
King Cole. Yeah.
Nat King Cole. So
yeah.
And one name that never came up in all the the videos I watched and this research here was Louis Armstrong. I thought that maybe
yeah.
You can hear it though.
Yeah,
totally.
Yeah,
totally.
The growl, the whole.
Yeah.
If you listen to Bob Dylan and the band, the Basement Tapes. Now I know Tom Waits didn't base his entire career on that record, but everything I hear of Tom Waits, I always think of certain stuff from the Basement Tapes because they are just playing any instrument they can get their hands on.
Right.
And it's not, it could be a spoken word. It could be a jazzy thing. It could be some old street song. It just, that Americana that's the word I'm trying to, it's not so much folk, but Americana,
Yep.
He was really, basically scooping up Americana and serving it back at you,
Yeah.
But
I love his drive of only sticking to that,
Yeah. He could have easily, everybody else, when he started out, everybody was doing hippie folk music and then disco and then trying to sound punk and new wave. And he never jumped on any of those bandwagons. He was just this oddball. I remember reading some interview with some cute Hollywood actress. I forget who it was, but she was talking about the kind of guys she likes. And she's like, I like guys like Tom Waits and David Lynch who would be flipping burgers if they weren't doing what they were doing.
Mm-hmm. and
who's going to hire these people to work in a fucking office?
If you think about Joe Jackson was doing a lot of odd to the left, Elvis Costello. There were a handful of people doing very different things in comparison to what the trends were doing.
Nick Cave. Nick Cave is another. Yeah, he's another.
Yeah,
very close to Tom Waits.
Yeah,
and just weirdness. But two very direct influences, and Alan and I were talking about this before the show. Howlin' Wolf, you can definitely hear in Tom Waits, and Howlin' Wolf directly influences Captain Beefheart. And Captain Beefheart has said on record, he's going for that Howlin' Wolf vocal style. And when Tom Waits meets Kathleen Brennan, who he ends up getting married to, she introduced him to Captain Beefheart. And you can hear his voice getting a lot more howly and growly in the 80s after he met her.
Yeah, Beefheart early on is just an outstanding blues and could have gone that route and done well. And then he just really got in with Frank Zappa, and I think just spiraled to this. He had a vision, and he would do his thing, and really
put a
lot of the people in his band through hell because they just never knew what to do.
Way outside the box.
Yeah,
Captain Beefheart. Yeah.
Which I love. That stuff attracts me. So
yeah, obviously, listen to Wet Shoelaces, people. Just Google Wet Shoelaces band, and if you want to hear outside the box. All right. So basically, he gets a job. He basically moves out of his, once he graduates high school or leaves home, he's rolling around in the bowels of the LA folk circuit, as he put it. He got a job as a doorman at a folk club called the Heritage. And he was no good at it because doorman, you got to be able to tell people they can't come in, and people would just always be pushing him around. But he made his stage debut there, and he got paid $25. He played open mic nights at the Troubadour on Mondays, and that was a big deal once he got into that, because record executives would come to the Troubadour to scout new talent.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah.
So he gets him completely different from anything.
Yeah, he got discovered there by Herb Cohen, who was manager of the Alice Cooper Group. We talked about him a little bit in our Alice Cooper episode, and that episode is fantastic, if I might say so myself. Go check out the Alice Cooper Group episode we did. Herb basically he's managing the Alice Cooper Group and Frank Zappa, and he discovers Tom at the open mic nights at the Troubadour, and decides to, instead of signing him to the same record label that Zappa and Alice Cooper were on, basically he hears David Geffen is setting up a new label that he called Asylum. The reason Geffen named that label Asylum is because it was supposed to be an asylum away from the bullshit of the record business, because David Geffen was this cool cat who all the musicians could relate to. So he gets signed to Asylum Records, and his first album, Closing Time, gets released in 1973. It's got a song on it called Old 55, which was a little bit of a hit. The Eagles covered it, and Waits went on record saying that the Eagles were about as exciting as watching paint dry. So he didn't exactly endorse their cover, although he kind of made up with them later. But at the time, he was a young, young punk.
He hate the Eagles for obvious reasons.
Yeah. Well, if you're a Big Lebowski fan, you got to hate the fucking Eagles.
Yeah. Well, when Ticketmaster was selling Gold Circle seats to see Eric Clapton in the early 90s for $30, right? And then the next week, I worked at Tower Records and Ticketmaster. Oh, Eagles reunion, okay, and they have been relevant in 30 fucking years. And the test ticket comes out and it says $300, and I'm like, oh, wait a minute. I thought it, was an error, and I'm like, I got all these people out here waiting. Tickets are going to go on sale in like 3 minutes. So I called Ticketmaster. I'm like, this says 300 there. Yeah, that's right. And it sold out in 20 seconds. $300.
Yep.
And that changed
And that was
the end of affordable concerts for the middle class.
Yeah, right.
And now what do kids do? They watch YouTube. They don't go to shows. Yeah. They killed live music. Fuck Don Henley.
Yeah.
Amen. Yeah.
So I don't know. My favorite album from that era is, and Alan and I were talking about this earlier too, was Small Change. I just think that is such a classic. If you want to start with one album from the 70s to get a sense of what that cat was like in that time.
Yeah.
Small Change.
So that's a desert island disc for me.
Yeah.
It's just if that's all he did, I'd be good with it.
Oh wow. Yeah.
To me that's everything. I just love that.
It's got the Piano Has Been Drinking, which is what Silky's 9-year-old amazingly referenced. Just drops that reference.
Yeah.
I'm not surprised because Silky's such a music nut, but
he hears that in the car and he just thinks that's funny.
Step Right Up.
Step Right Up. Yeah.
Pasties in a G string.
Small change got rained on.
Exactly. It's just
38.
He's like a character that stepped out of a John Fonte book.
Oh, totally.
Or a Charles Bukowski put to music.
Yeah.
Really any of that. Now there are some songs that are a little tough, but for the most part, you can't go wrong with any of them.
Yeah.
He in one there's a documentary that I'll drop on the Click Pit along with the book I was talking about. Alan and I both watched it. Hold on, let me get the name of that documentary. The name of the documentary is Tales from a Cracked Jukebox. And in that documentary, he talks about Tom Traubert's Blues, which is the first song on this album, and it's called Four Sheets to the Wind in Copenhagen is the subtitle. But he apparently just went out on Skid Row in LA and just got completely wasted.
Wow.
Passed out, threw up, came home and wrote this song. And it sounds like a hungover song, but it's got a lot of
nice. Yeah. I like his early years 1 and 2. It's just so raw. You really hear what he was doing before that first album,
Yeah, that was released by Herb Cohen way later, I think in the 90s, and
probably against his wishes, or
against his wishes, because those were demo songs and stuff. There's a few. There are versions of a few songs that ended up on those first few albums, but it is. I personally, as a fan, I'd rather have it out there. I liked hearing all that stuff too. I marathoned all this stuff before this episode, and some of that stuff I think was the first time I've heard it. I hadn't really checked out those early years album. But I was basically probably like 1988 or so. My mom had this friend named Jim, and he was a total music nut. So he would always hip me. I would hip him to like Jane's Addiction and Metallica, and he'd be hipping me to the Dixie Dregs and Jamaluddin Takuma. Yeah, you remember him. And just crazy jazz cats. He was the one who told me, hey, man, there's this great jazz guitar player named Vernon Reed, and he's starting a rock band.
Oh, my God.
Called Living Color.
Yeah.
So he knew Vernon Reed already from the jazz scene.
Crazy.
And he hipped me in like 1987. He's like, man, you got to check out this album called Frank's Wild Years by this guy named Tom Waits. And he lends me the cassette, and I'm like, this is some wild shit. So I go to the record store, and I'm like, I want to buy some Tom Waits. And they're like, you got to get Small Change and you got to get Rain Dogs.
That's
so
great.
I bought those 2 cassettes and just played the shit out of them.
Yeah. I remember us listening to Frank's Wild Years and just pissing ourselves. I laughed so hard.
Yeah, that's on Swordfish Trombones. That the song Frank's, and I bought that one. I bought Swordfish Trombones, and I think Heart Attack and Vine next. But yeah, that song Frank's Wild Years is fucking hilarious. I got to find the lyrics to that. I'm gonna find the lyrics to that and recite it. Talk amongst yourselves. I got to find those lyrics.
One thing we got to hear now, Alan. Did you do mosh pits back in the day? Did you stand on the edge and kind of shake your head at that, or were you?
Yeah, I remember doing one, and it was so scary that you get caught up in one of those things and you have no control.
Yeah,
and
it's intense.
I just remember like not having a panic attack, but really kind of almost freaking out, just wanting to get to the edge, which I did, and I never.
Are you gonna tell the Jim mosh pit?
No, you're gonna tell the Jim Okel. This is one of the greatest pit stories.
So basically, I told you like he was in between my mom's age and my age, so I would like hip him to.
So picture Shaggy from Scooby-Doo.
Yeah, it looked like Shaggy from Scooby-Doo, and he's really into like he was at the Fox when Leonard Skinner recorded One for the Road. He was at those shows in the 10th row.
Their live album, yeah.
Nice.
He was a child of the 70s.
Yeah.
And so he would hit me to cool shit, like mainly a lot of jazz stuff, and I'd hip him. So I was like, dude, there's this band coming. They're called Bad Brains. They're part hardcore punk and part reggae. It's fucking amazing. You got to go. I already had tickets. I was going with some other friends, but and first of all, the opening band was Corrosion of Conformity. So the mosh pit was just insane. Yes. And I got so psyched up. I'd never been in a mosh pit either, but I got so psyched up. And I've been to shows with mosh pits. I always just stayed out of them. Corrosion of Conformity just was so badass. I just ran. I was like, yeah. I jumped in the mosh pit, and it was like being in a car wreck, literally.
Yeah.
And I was immediately trying to get out, and I got out in about 10 seconds.
Oh,
it's like, okay, that's enough for this skinny ass motherfucker.
COC is back in the studio, and they're working on a new album. I can't wait.
Nice.
Yeah.
So, and Bad Brains was amazing at that show, by the way. They were just fucking phenomenal. Anyways, so my friend, I find out the next day, I hear Jim's story. Jim knows nothing about mosh pits. He gets there early. He goes to the very front of the stage.
Oh,
he's wearing his Shaggy t-shirt and some shorts, pair of shorts and flip-flops. And this venue has like an orchestra pit with a wall around it, and that became the mosh pit. And he was at the very front of that, right at the front of the stage.
And this is the guy that just doesn't have a clue what's coming.
And so when that shit kicked off, he was freaked out.
Yeah.
And he said he basically spent about 15 minutes just getting the shit kicked out of him, trying to get out of that mosh pit. And he said one point he was almost out, and there was this girl sitting on the wall that surrounds the back of the mosh pit, and she had combat boots on, and she kicked him back in.
And he's like, Mr. Hippie, peace, love. Like, hey, wait a minute. What are you doing?
Wait a minute, man. Kind of like that teacher in Beavis and Butthead.
Oh yeah,
yeah, exactly.
Right.
With the acoustic guitar, exactly.
Yeah,
so
the 8-track tapes. Yeah,
right.
Yeah.
So basically, when he finally did get out, he was minus a flip flop. Like the flip flop was gone. For the rest of the evening, he's walking around one barefoot, one flip flop.
If that's all he lost, he made out okay.
Yeah.
I'm sure he had some bruises. All right,
Oh
I want one of you guys to do some jazz music. Just go, and I'm going to recite Frank's Wild Years. We're ready?
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, make
Go
some
ahead,
jazz sounds. Go ahead, Alan.
Well,
Well, Frank settled down out in the valley and hung his wild years on a nail that he drove through his wife's forehead. He sold used office furniture out there on San Fernando Road and assumed a $30,000 loan on a 15.25% put down payment on a little 2-bedroom place. His wife was a spent piece of used jet trash, made good Bloody Marys, kept her mouth shut most of the time, had a little chihuahua named Carlos that had some kind of skin disease and was totally blind. They had a thoroughly modern kitchen, self-cleaning oven, the whole bit. Frank drove a little sedan. They were so happy. One night, Frank was on his way home from work, stopped at the liquor store, picked up a couple Mickey's Big Mouths, drank them in the car on his way to the Shell station, got a gallon of gas in a can, drove home, doused everything in the house, torched it, parked across the street laughing, watching it all burn. Oh, Halloween orange and chimney red. Then Frank put on a top 40 station, got on the Hollywood freeway, headed north.
Wow.
That's fantastic.
That's Frank's Wild Years. Sound just like Tom Waits too, I'm sure.
I thought you'd put the record on.
Yeah, it's just amazing. So I want to hear about y'all's stories of when you first heard of Tom Waits. Alan.
Well, yeah, go ahead,
Silky.
Alan.
I can't recall exactly when I first heard of him until Steve turned me on to Small Change, and this was in the late 90s. Although I had heard his stuff, I just didn't.
Steve being his bandmate in the legendary Wet Shoelaces.
My musical partner, Steve,
Yeah.
right. So that was in the late 90s, but I had heard his stuff like on movie soundtracks primarily.
Yeah.
We just watched a movie that came out in 91. I remember watching it on a VHS tape back in the day. It's called Night on Earth, if you remember this.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
He
did a soundtrack. It's on the playlist that we had. We dropped the playlist. It's got some of those Night on Earth songs.
Yeah, great. Okay, great. Yeah, it was great movie. So that movie, there was another one. This is the only prop I brought for tonight. Things to Do in Denver When You're Dead.
Oh, nice. Andy Garcia.
Yeah.
He's got Tom Waits has the opening track, Jockey Full of Bourbon.
Nice.
Which is a great track. But this is a really good soundtrack. Anyway, by the way.
That's a good movie.
Yeah, I love that movie. Yeah. So yeah, Steve was the first one to turn me on, and Small Change, like I said, I first time I heard that was it. Instant Desert Island Disc.
Yeah.
Could not get enough of it.
He drops Closing Time, which is a decent enough debut. And then In the Heart of a Saturday Night, it's a decent album, kind of mellow. I thought Nighthawks at the Diner was interesting. The live album of all original songs.
Oh yeah, that's great.
Absolutely, yes, that's a
classic.
That's another one that I bought. I had a handful of them back in the day, and this one, I think he's really starting to find his voice on this one. It's got the Big Joe and Phantom 309. That song that about the ghost truck driver, was kind of a surprise ending. And I don't know. I think there was a lot of pressure apparently when he first started recording to sound like the West Coast folk scene. And so you get a little bit of that in Closing Time, and you see him veering away, being more himself and In the Heart of a Saturday Night. And I really think Nighthawks at the Diner, he's just really doing his Tom Waits routine.
Yep.
and it sets him up for small change. Foreign Affairs and Blue Valentine are good, but they're a lot of ballads. You know, he was really interested in the old pop standards and stuff. And then Heart Attack and Vine, I think he really starts finding his groove. There's a lot of R&B influenced stuff on that one.
Mm-hmm.
I thought so.
Well, my introduction to him was actually through movies. I remember seeing Paradise Alley, Sylvester Stallone, and he's in that briefly. And then I remember seeing Rumblefish, Francis Ford Coppola. It's like another Outsiders, almost the same cast. And he's in that. And so later when you know, I was living with Snags and we're, you know, getting into Tom Waits, you know, Snags is buying the tapes and stuff. And I'm like, that's the guy in these movies. And I've seen Down by Law. Jim Jarmusch is just.
We rented Down by Law during that year when we were at the Animal House, basically. Yeah. That's got John Lurie, who blocked me on Twitter. I got blocked on Twitter by John Lurie.
Oh, there you go.
From the Lounge Lizards. Yeah. Him and Tom Waits are co-star in Down by Law. I haven't seen that probably since then. That was like 89. We rented that.
86 probably.
Well, it came out in 86, but we rented it in like 88. It was probably 88 when we rented it. Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, I had kind of stumbled on him through the movies, and I liked his, again, just a character out of a John Fonte book, you know.
Yeah.
Right in LA too. Very much almost a personification of a Charles Bukowski story, you know.
Yep, for sure.
And what's interesting is as they get older, James Hetfield looks like Tom Waits.
I've been noticing that, yeah.
And there's a few people like that. Brad Pitt looks like Robert Redford. It's just weird. It's weird to me.
What's it? Paul Rogers from Bad Company looking a little Tom Waitsy too.
David Lee Roth looks like Sting as he gets older.
Yeah, Sting with less hair. Yeah.
Yeah, it's just they're all kind of merging together. This is kind of coming off our UFO episode, but it's just an interesting observation.
Yeah, they're all kind of.
I get told I look like Vin Diesel all the time.
Oh, yeah.
There you go.
Yeah.
From the eyebrows up, Vin Diesel, looking bald.
Yeah, you're the Iron Giant, Alan.
Right.
Fucking hilarious. But basically he meets Kathleen Brennan. He meets his wife. He's doing the soundtrack for One from the Heart for Francis Coppola around 1980. This story assistant and scriptwriter named Kathleen Brennan wanders in and starts talking to him, and they just fall head over heels for each other. She convinces him to stop drinking. He was just basically, like I said, that story where he's out on Skid Row vomiting and coming back and writing songs. So
what's interesting, Kathleen Brennan can light her own farts. She was heavy.
She could clear a room with a beer fart.
With a beer fart.
Yeah. She's well known for that.
Man.
So you can hear a distinct difference. So Heart Attack and Vine, he's already getting funkier with Heart Attack and Vine, but it's still that 70s Tom Waits voice and subject matter and stuff. And that's 1980. He's with her for a few years. Swordfish Trombones comes out. And she's hipping him to Captain Beefheart and Harry Partch, who's a composer. Just does some weird shit that I know Alan told me He's heard of Harry Parch before.
Yeah.
So
I've
she's
been
hip.
parched before.
Oh yeah,
You know.
absolutely. I'm sure you have.
Yeah.
And you used to have hair, so there you go.
Yeah. You know.
Yeah. So
Hello.
you can hear a distinct difference. You can hear those influences between Heart Attack and Vine and Swordfish Trombones. This new, weirder, more kind of polyrhythmic, let's bang on some trash cans and see what happens kind of guy starts to emerge with Swordfish Trombones. And that's the one with Frank's Wild Years on it, which I recited perfectly earlier. And
that was not the original recording.
You wouldn't know that.
Yeah.
But it's got some great songs on it. Underground, 16 shells from a 30-06.
And
just singing like Tom Waits makes you cough.
We've got a playlist for tonight's show called When You Ain't Got Nobody.
Yeah. And it's got all this shit on there. It's
everything you need.
Complete Tom Waits on Spotify, everything that's on there. It's got a song, Swordfish Trombone, Gin Soak Boy, and then a instrumental called Rainbirds, which is a telltale of things to come with Rain Dogs. Oh, Down, Down, Down's a great fucking song. So this 80s version of Tom Waits is starting to emerge. And then Rain Dogs, which is just a fucking classic album. Yeah. This one, Keith Richards plays on. He invites Keith Richards to record with him. Keith Richards is on 3 songs. He basically said, he's recording this little studio in the back of his house.
Yeah.
And Keith Richards shows up to play on the album on 3 songs, and a semi-truck pulls up. And the back of the semi-truck opens, and Keith arrived via limo or something, and it's full of guitars.
Oh, funny.
So
he
Keith
brought everything.
He can choose from his 150 guitars or whatever.
Let's do an old steel lap.
Yeah, right. But I think if you're gonna choose one album from the '80s era, it's got to be Rain Dogs, and that's got a Jockey Full of Bourbon, Singapore, Clap Hands, Big Black Mariah. Here come a Big Black Mariah.
Diamonds and Gold. That's another one on there.
Gun Street Girl. Killer. Yeah. Blind Love is a nice ballad. Downtown Train, which Rod Stewart ended up covering and having a hit with.
Right. Gorgeous.
Ninth and Hennepin, which is a crazy spooky little song talking about you sleeping in a room and taking on the dreams of those who slept there. Just some crazy lyrics.
So I've got a note here that Clap Hands sounds like something that I've done, and I was supposed to follow up on that, and I never did. So, sorry. Yeah, that's very helpful. I know.
You don't remember what that was referring to?
No. I just remember listening to it. I'm like, wow, that sounds like a song that I did along the way, and I never went back and listened.
I never checked it. Oh, by the way, we got a special treat for you cats at the end of this episode. Alan has recorded a song influenced by Tom Waits. What's the name of your song?
Waits for Me.
Waits for Me.
Waits for Me. It's an instrumental.
And I thought that was like a kung fu thing. Is where my mind went with it.
It's got a little Oriental vibe to it too.
Yeah, totally.
Oh yeah, there were. It was an electronic, a MIDI instrument. Of some sort. I don't, but yes, I have used that kind of sound before. Yeah. And I was trying to get a jangly guitar actually, but it wound up sounding like that.
It sounded good. And so we're talking about, before the show, and I'm like, oh shit, I recorded a Tom Waits song. Mine was called Troubles at Sea, and it's about a doomed ship commander named Howlin' Captain Tom, named after Howlin' Wolf, Captain Beefheart, and Tom Waits. So we're going to throw those on at the end of the episode when I edit this. And so you cats can hear,
you're going to hear that after. Yeah.
Yeah. Hear our limited talent, my ramshackle rock and his actual musicianship. So,
yeah. And the one thing I wanted to say about Tom Waits is it came along right at the time that I was discovering Jack Kerouac, and you kind of go through that phase where you check out some of these beatnik poets and writings, and you're starting to read for your own journey or whatever. You're checking things out,
right?
And that's when I was dabbling with. I had read "Women" by Bukowski, and
great book. Love that book.
Ham on Rye, and when I listened to Ham on Rye, I played Tom Waits through the whole thing. But that's my Tom Waits analogy. Is just it was right at that late teens, and you're just really discovering music and books, really, which became our passion. We're still checking shit out all the time. So,
and yammering about it every week on this amazing show. What you need to donate to, go to Snags and Silky.
Yes, donate.
Suggested donation $4 million, but we'll take 10,000.
I'm doing this show without shoes on, and it's cold down here in South Florida.
And I want to buy a yacht, so just jump on there, drop the. All right, so then he drops the Black Rider. Alan, talk to us about the Black Rider, since that's one of your favorite Tom Waits albums. What do you like about it so much?
His growl, his gruff vocal just seems to be really emphasized on this record. And just, the screaming barker at the beginning just sucks me right in. I'm like, oh yeah, I'm in for this ride. Absolutely. Just sounds like the devil screaming at you.
I love it.
It's got some Kurt Weill kind of influence, and you got William Burroughs on there. Yeah. I actually skipped over. We talked about Frank's Wild Years. I skipped over Bone Machine, but I have something to say about that. But go ahead and finish talking about the Black Rider.
I just love the whole theme of the album. It's my second favorite next to Small Change. I just Murder in the Red Barn.
Oh yeah, that's just wild.
Really dark stuff.
Lyrics in there about there's always some animals that need killing or whatever.
Right. There's just, he's really dark stuff, but he makes it beautiful somehow.
Oh yeah.
And another, just a note on here. I don't even care if I know what he's saying. He's like the only artist, you could listen to him and, you maybe not, I'm not understanding all the words, but I don't care. It's great.
Yeah.
With any other artist, I think it would be like, oh, I got to figure out what were those lyrics. But with him,
it just doesn't matter.
But when you actually do find out, it's like, wow, these are really good lyrics. Like, one of my favorites, like, there's no devil, it's just God when he's drunk.
Yeah,
that's right.
Yeah.
Oh, that's funny.
That's a great line.
Yeah.
Captain Beefheart is like that. Only his stuff, he's just so out there that you don't know what he's saying, and some of it doesn't quite make sense. I literally got on a Beefheart kick and just tracked down all his stuff, and it's just very bizarre, but I just love it. It's the same with Tom Waits. You just put it on and deal with it.
Right.
That's a great way to put it. You put it on and deal with it.
Let it happen.
Yeah. You're outside the box. Just enjoy it.
Yeah. And, when you do put AC/DC Highway to Hell on, it makes it even better because sometimes you got to run with weights, and then go back to the other stuff.
Yeah. Right.
So he takes about a 6-year break after the Black Rider. So Bone Machine, though, which came out the year before, 92, I had a coworker who was obsessed with this album. Like had it on cassette. It's either cassette or CD, and was just this is back in the days when you didn't have streaming, so you spend $10 on an album, you're going to get your money's worth and play the shit out of it. And just
that's in your player for months.
You remember Mark Steinberg, right?
Yeah.
So that was the cat, and just would not shut up about Bone Machine. And I had all the other stuff, or a lot of the other stuff at the time, but for some reason I didn't pick up Bone Machine at the time. Also has Keith Richards on it.
Yeah.
Since then I've listened to it and I fucking love it. It's like
that's
Tom
early
Waits,
90s, right? 92.
92.
Yeah.
He's just turbocharging the weirdness on this album.
Yeah. And he at a tower a lot. I was actually working there then.
And a lot of it's got the guitars up front in the mix, and it's got this kind of grinding kind of weird grinding kind of energy, all stripped down as a killer tune.
I know Kathleen Brennan wrote like most of that record with him.
Yeah, Murder in the Red Barn is actually on this album, but yeah, it's a killer album. I'd say the 90s, the iconic, for me, if you're getting one 70s album, it's got to be Small Change. If you get one 80s album, it's got to be Rain Dogs. And if you get one 90s album, it's got to be Bone Machine. In my opinion, with Alan, it would be the Black Rider.
Yeah.
He comes back 6 years after the Black Rider with Mule Variations. He's on a different label now. He went from Asylum Records in the 70s to Island Records in the 80s. In the 90s, he moves over to Anti, the Anti label, and late 90s. And Mule Variations, when you get into his later stuff, I'm not as familiar with it. I thought it was okay. It had some banjo type stuff on it, a little bit of country folk vibe. And then Alice and Blood Money are both very mellow, a lot of ballads. And then Real Gone just kicks back into groovy Tom Waits mode again. I liked that one. And I liked the last one, Bad As Me. I don't know. You guys got anything to say about any of the later shit?
No, that Brawlers, Bawlers, and Bastards is a collection. There's a lot of really good stuff on there.
Yeah. So there's a
massive.
The playlist we did, it's got all these albums we talked about. It's got some soundtrack work that he did. It's got and then it ends with an outtakes album called Orphans, Brawlers, Bawlers, and Bastards, which it's just there's a lot of really good stuff on there. Just shit, you're like, why didn't this make it onto an album?
But it's its own box set, and rather than rehash all the the hits and everything, here's a big collection.
It's a big collection. Like some people don't have anything that didn't make
so
it
if
on
you
the album.
started with that, I'm good with that. There's some great stuff on there. He does a Ramones cover on there, Return of Jackie and Judy.
It's got a ton of stuff great on there.
Stuff. Sea of Love is on there.
The other thing that I didn't mention in the late 80s is he jammed with the Replacements. And if you think about it, that kind of makes sense. Replacements are one of my favorite bands from the 80s. There's a great giant book about them called Trouble Boys, which I highly recommend. But they had a fondness for booze like Tom did, and just this kind of anti-everything kind of attitude. And so it kind of made sense, and they kind of connected in the late 80s, and they jammed, and they recorded a handful of songs together. So we got those on the playlist too. All this stuff except for Brawlers, Bawlers, and Bastards is in chronological order. So somewhere in the 80s in that playlist, you'll see those Replacement songs.
Mm-hmm.
That's cool. I wasn't aware of that. I think my favorite of the later stuff he did was the last album, Bad As Me. I think that's the best out of his later stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But I did want to mention, I have to admit, Beavis and Butthead turned me on to Bone Machine because they were watching the video for I Don't Want to Grow Up, where
Nice.
he crawls under the booth there.
Yeah. Playing that little ukulele.
Yeah, and the microphone and everything. Oh, that's a great video.
Great.
Yeah.
But his more recent stuff is more of a maturity in there. Or
I don't think so. No. It's just there's Blood Money and Alice are just really a lot of ballady type stuff. But Real Gone and Bad as Me, he's back into
that's kind of
funky weirdness, growly voice, Tom Waits.
Yeah,
you know, Real Gone is
again, it's like a sideshow thing. Just you never know what you're going to hear in there. And again, I always go back to the Basement tapes where it's just very eclectic in styles. And,
it's like a jug band at a carnival.
Yes, that's what I mean. That carnival vibe.
Yeah.
The Real Fat Lady and Tom Waits right there. You know, it's.
The Black Rider. That's the vibe I get on the Black Rider. Exactly. Sideshow. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's a little dangerous. You don't know quite what's going to happen.
Yeah.
But that's it's cool to just put that on early morning driving somewhere or whatever.
Yeah, I listen to most of my music at work, and if I'm in a kind of a mood where I'm kind of stressed out and feeling ragged, Tom Waits is perfect. I just put some Tom Waits on and just it soothes the soul that way. So we're gonna leave you cats with Alan's song "Waits for Me." Obviously, Waits is spelled Waits, and then it'll be followed by a song by the Craigs, which is my band with Craig on all the instruments, called "Troubles at Sea." These are little Tom Waits tributes.
And then after those two, there's going to be Silence
by Silky.
My interpretation.
It's his John Cage, interpretation
in homage of all the all the people that we've lost this last year.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, your tribute to Gene Hackman and his dog.
With there's an extended solo, which I think you'll find very tricky.
Which you won't hear because it's all silent.
Well, it's
but if your dog will be able to hear it because it's at those frequencies where only dogs can hear.
Exactly.
Cool.
Yeah. All right. Well, that was Tom Waits, kids. Alan, you got anything to take us out with?
Just thank you guys again for inviting me and for along for the ride. This was great.
No
Always
problem.
A pleasure.
Yeah.
Always a pleasure. Alan did his hair tonight. If you could see.
Extra shiny. Yeah.
That had to take some time. That's Shaka Khan couldn't compete with that high hair.
So we got more shit coming up the next few weeks. Alan is on the docket to join us for a few more episodes. So unless he gets hit by a truck, that will happen. So we will or wins the lottery and decides to tell us to fuck off.
Balls deep.
Yeah, there's always the positive side of it.
So I speaking of winning the lottery, I saw a story where a guy gets the ticket. He's at work and he's screaming and yelling. He goes into his boss's office that he had worked there for 15 years or something, pisses all over his boss's office, and then hops up on a desk and just takes a shit right on his boss's desk. Gets home and realizes he didn't win anything.
Hilarious.
I was like, oh my God, that is hysterical.
Yeah.
That's fun. That could be a Tom Waits song right there.
Yeah.
Oh, beautiful.
Yeah.
All right, we'll leave you cats with that image.
Yes.
Peace out.
If you win the lottery, take a second and make sure.
Yeah, make sure. That's not the first news story I've heard about people winning the lottery and pissing on their boss's desk. It seems like
it is a dream.
It seems like that's what people. I don't get it. I wouldn't do that.
I just be like, dude, I'm out. I've
But
been miserable for the last 15 years.
It seems like a thing.
You're part of it, you know.
Well, no, I mean, how else are you going to pay your bills? You got to do something.
Yeah.
But anyways.
Yeah.
All right. So,
All right,
peace out, motherfuckers.
Deuces.
Later.